Let's now get a bit more practical. We will hear four presentations by my colleagues, followed also again by a Q&A session. And we will make sure to have the most relevant questions answered. I'd like to invite on stage my colleague Fernando, who is the co-director of the Cluster of Resilient and Climate Neutral Regions and scientific director of the Transitions Hub at Climate Kick. He is currently the coordinator of Pathways to Resilience and will give you an introduction into P2R.
Thank you. Thank you, Luis. Thank you, Elena. Thank you, Irene. The mission on adaptation for climate change is what gathers us here, but it is really about the people and the individuals as change makers that we can make a difference. And we are very, very pleased that we have a lot of people joining online, other people that excuse themselves that couldn't join. This session is going to be available, it's being recorded. So we do have the mission to reach out to those who are eager, capable, willing, and convinced that the challenge we have is pressing, is urgent, but at the same time, we can actually achieve the results of that our local communities, our regions, because we are basically here on a public mission. And the transformative approach of the missions is what put people on the moon, that created the high-speed trains, that all of these large-scale challenges require large-scale solutions. So the mission of adaptation to climate change is no different. And today, I'll try to make it fun for you, but it's a challenge always with 4 male speakers in the row and 4 presentations. So I do apologize for the lack of gender balance in this, but that's not an indication of the gender balance of our program. So it's just, traveling involved and being in Brussels. Also, well, people had to, we just had to pick people to be here today. Now, Pathways to Resilience is part of the mission. It is funded by Horizon Europe, and that gives a peculiarity that we have the luxury and we have also the obligation to be innovative, think outside the box, but at the same time achieve concrete results. So the mission of adaptation to climate change and Pathways to Resilience, it's a consortium of 14 partners. I'll mention our partners in a minute. But just to put things in context, usually Horizon Europe is one of the most competitive and one of the most progressive research and innovation programs in the world. And the combination of a climate adaptation mission and the missions approach that the European Commission has pioneered more broadly, because it's not only about adapting to climate change, it's also about making cities climate neutral, it's also restoring the health of soils, it's also restoring the health of oceans, and it's also battling cancer. And at the same time, the discussions about a possible 6th mission on the new European Bauhaus, that Europeans, we are very, very fortunate. We're very fortunate to have these possibilities, to have a research and innovation program, to have visionaries, decision makers, and a group of people that are willing to spend 5 years of their life doing this. So thank you to our consortium partners, and thank you to all of you for being interested in this program today. Now, I hope I can figure out how this works. Yes, this works. All right. I really hope that most of you are not here because of the funding, but because you are committed to the mission, although funding helps, of course. Now, 21 million euros sounds like a lot of money, but given the challenge that we have and the amount of resources that are available at the subnational level and at the national level, but the mission has and Pathways to Resilience has that advantage that we have funding available for beneficiaries. 21 million euros, and my colleague Ricardo will tell you the details about that, but we also committed to engage and support 100 European regions and communities. Those that are part of the charter, those charter regions are so important for the mission, but not only those are those that want to create change. The 300 and plus regions and mission, friends of the mission, they represent around 30 to 40% of European population, 40% of the European geographical coverage. That is transformational, you know, in terms of the scope and the ambition. So that's why supporting 100 of those 300, whether they are mission signatories of the charter or not, it is really already, the level of ambition is quite high. Now, we have also the challenge to develop a program that makes sense for regions, that makes sense for communities. And that's why we have decided to take a more of a peer learning, experiential-based approach, and based on capacities, based on frameworks that are linked to what you would do if you're a public authority or a local authority in your planning processes. However, one of the intention is really to combine this incremental and more transformational approach and guide you in a process of innovation and change for transformative climate resilience. Now, how we do this and why this is important in the context of the mission, because the mission, and if you are online, you have an advantage over the people here in the room. You can just Google quickly, adaptation mission EU, and then you will read quickly what this is about. Now, whether you're a mission signatory or not, you know, the mission is embedded in the very ambitious and very progressive updated climate adaptation plan of Europe. And the climate adaptation plan of Europe uses these keywords because it really means it. It has to be holistic, systemic, transformational. And that's what, if you're going to be following the upcoming events in the COP, those are keywords that will be mentioned a lot. But in Europe, we are fortunate that we will be actually trying to achieve through a bit of a you know, the missions approach. We're trying to achieve that in practice. Now, we want to support, and we will be supporting 100 regions in developing climate adaptation pathways. And what does it mean in the context of this project? It means three things that and we are supporting the adaptation mission, 3 objectives in different ways. But basically, we need to provide information, best practice exchanges, and a method, because many of the regions and local authorities are already doing that, are interested in this program. They're already doing in some way or another climate adaptation planning, but you are not doing it separately from climate mitigation planning. So that's a reality. That's why this mission is collaborating intensively also with the cities mission. And then the approach that we are following, and my colleague Thomas Kutz will be presenting, it's already aligned to that vision. But we also understand that, you know, the governance of the mission is not one project that can do it all. You know, we will be helping in the adaptation planning part, but then the change is really expected in the demonstration project, really developing those flagship large-scale demonstrators that can actually prove. And the idea is that by proving that it's possible, that we will generate this positive effect that other regions within Europe, but also our neighboring countries, associate countries, and hopefully, you know, globally, we can lead the way in transformative climate action. Now, 5 years of our life, most of us were in the consortium, it feels like a long time. Now I have a 5-year-old at home, and he's gonna be already going to secondary school when I finish this project, hopefully. And it feels like a long time, but in reality, it's not a lot of time, you know, given the climate, you know, the climate challenge and the climate emergency. Now, we are not the only project doing things for the mission. So today we're very, very fortunate that many of our mission projects, sister projects, managed to be here in the room, and then also managed to create synergies. We are working behind the scenes because I can understand that it's complicated, it's slightly confusing for regions, for local authorities. Say, well, there are so many projects and so many calls for proposals. Well, don't worry. We are doing our homework behind the scenes. We're getting aligned. Today, Climax is around here. You know, someone from of course, if you want to talk about Climax, climate risk assessments, and they also have funding that they're launching today. Frederic Spernavelan from Deltares is here. She's happy to take some questions. And we are part of the mission. We are the 2 largest projects of the mission until now. It doesn't mean that we are the most attractive, the most appealing, or the funniest. But we are under the umbrella of the mission implementation platform. So today, Matthias Watzak from the mission implementation platform, Resilience, he should be here because well, if he's not right now here, but he'll be around. But I'll say a word about the mission implementation platform. Resilience, Magica, Climate Fit, Regions for Climate, Embrace It, Decimate, Arcadia, Resist are here today. So that really, the informal exchange creates such an opportunity for us to work together. And we're already doing our homework and aligning. Now, Meet for Adapt, and this is one of the questions that Meet for Adapt is receiving today a lot, and sometimes there are some questions that are more specific than they are more related to risk assessment or more to transformative climate adaptation planning or climate adaptation planning. And we are under the umbrella of Meet for Adapt. And Meet for Adapt is a community of practice. It is giving technical advice to regions. It is it's serving a really important purpose to gather all of the knowledge that we're all generating, because this is a research and innovation funding program. We're all funded by Horizon Europe. So this distillation of knowledge and making those connections to make it applicable for regions, they have a very important role together with the European Environmental Agency on supporting the European Environmental Agency Climate Adapt. So all of the knowledge we're generating will be in Climate Adapt, because it's a public good and because it's a great place. If you haven't visited, especially the people online, you can also Google Climate Adapt EEA right now. Save it in your bookmarks. You also can Google Meet for Adapt, Google it, or Ecosia it, because they plant trees. And then you can save it in your bookmarks. So, and they're also, because we need to demonstrate that this actually works, and we cannot take decisions if we don't monitor and learn from things. So there is a really important role of Meet for Adapt in the monitoring and evaluation of the progress of the mission as a whole. Now, the last thing that I want to tell you, because my colleagues, and today I really hope we managed to answer most of your questions, but our website is being updated, and there's lots of people in the team that has been working tirelessly and to make things available for you as of today, including the call for applicants that my colleague Ricardo will be explaining in a minute, and a friend from Tecnalia. Tecnalia is also a friend of the mission. They will be also explaining some of the considerations of why vulnerable regions and how vulnerable regions, but not only. Okay. Then the subgrants is not the only thing, and that's why I was saying at the beginning, I hope you're not here because of the funding only. Because we also, and regions have a lot to learn from other regions, communities have a lot to learn from other communities, and certain solutions that work in France may also work in Croatia and vice versa. So we have a capacity building program with Innovation Practice Group, with the Finance Innovation Lab, because we know that the challenge is, okay, you can plan, you can select, identify, and how do you implement? So our colleague Kit England, he's our brain behind the climate adaptation finance planning. We are going to have a whole program around it. And it is very important, and this is where I'm going to make a very brief pause. Resilience maturity and the resilience maturity curve. There is a self-assessment tool that we have created, a short version and a long version for those who will be participating in the program. But the idea is that through the regional resilience journey that Thomas Kutz will be explaining in a minute, and the resilience maturity curve, we'll be able to tailor the approach of our program, whether a region is, let's say, less fortunate to have more climate adaptation planning today, because it might be that you are a bit more advanced, you are less advanced. So the message is, don't worry if you think you're already pretty much done with your planning and your implementation, because that's the reality. Or if you are less advanced, the idea is that these tools help us to work together with you. And that's the last slide of today. Our wonderful consortium, they are here, most of our partners. We have the honor to be the coordinators at Climate Kick, but we're not the only ones. Erin is here, our colleagues from Erin, from ICLEI, they're also here, from Tecnalia. from LGI, from Regions 4, Climate Center. Did you know the Climate Center is actually quite a low, quite with a global scope. The Athens University, also here, Athens University of Economics and Business, PPMI, IASA, IID Europe, Global Infrastructure Basel, Deltares, and PWA. So this is where I stop now. I give the floor back to Luis, and thank you also to everybody who's around today.
Thanks a lot, Fernando, and you will be around. So if, in case you have questions, you will find them outside. And goodbye to both of you. So now let's get a bit deeper into a bit more detail into the RRJ, and I'd like to invite my colleague Thomas on stage, who is a senior advisor for the same cluster that Fernando is also working in, climate neutral and resilient regions, and he is one of the leaders of the regional resilience journey.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody here in front of us in person and online. Thank you very much also for the introduction and the very interesting context provided by Elina Badram and the introduction to P2R by Fernando. I'm now very pleased to be giving a little bit of an insight into what is the central framework of Pathway to Resilience with engaging with the regions, and that is the regional resilience journey. And now I need to figure out how this works, but it's pretty straightforward. That's good. I'll be talking about the regional resilience journey, which is, as I just said, the central framework for the Pathway to Resilience project, and will be on the contents-wise and operational-wise, the key interfacing with the regions that are partaking in the consortium or in the project and the call, the ones that will be selected. But we also really hope that there will be spillover effect, and that this will be used more broadly, not only within the mission adaptation and other projects, as we are already venturing out to some of the innovation actions, picking this up eventually as a framework, but also beyond. And so we hope that there will be uptake of this. We will also use the entire project itself and the 100 regions that will work with this to update and learn and improve this framework over time. So that's just been said. This is the first stage we're using this, and we use the whole innovation and research action of Pathway to Resilience to actually innovate and experiment with it and improve it. So at the end, we'll have a validated, proven, improved framework. Now, the regional resilience journey, or RRJ, is really meant to be an adaptable framework for regions and communities that wish to transition to climate resilience using a transformational adaptation approach. And I really want to emphasize the transformation there, because that's the new kid on the block, or the new thing of also what Elina Badram said, how is this different, the mission, etc., vis-a-vis other things. As such, this transformational approach is meant to help regions to flourish in their climate futures, moving beyond what we have currently always worked on, which is a bit more reactive and incremental approach. Instead, we try to seek to bring about systems change where this is needed in order to close the adaptation gap, to really shake the boundaries a little bit and create new systemic relationships, and deliver long-term prosperity in the face of climate change. So it is really trying to make the best and more than that, and just helping to protect. It's going beyond that, trying to have that other more broader holistic vision of things. Further, the way we designed this, we really took at heart to address the transition to be just, so a just climate resilience transition, integrating a whole range of principles, processes, and practices that aim to ensure that no one, no region, no place, no person is left behind. As the central framework of Pathway to Resilience, the RJ is very much underpinned by a step-by-step guidance, by activities, tools, practices, trainings, and milestones that help regions and communities at all levels of maturity to develop strategies and plans that will help them to transition to climate resilience. It is also important to mention here that while this looks linear, it is not meant to be a really straightforward linear process. It is very much intended to and understood as an iteration or an iterative process and a multi-layered process. And with that, I mean, not only is there within each of these phases and steps different iterations possible and probably necessary, but also the whole cycle itself is meant to be iterated over time, a few times probably, in order to really get to your transitions you need, as that is not a static thing. We have developed the RRJ building on the European Environment Agency's regional adaptation support tool called the RAST. The RAST is somewhat more old school in the sense of being incremental. And so what we have added to this, I mean, we really base a lot of steps that the RAST has, and what we have added to this is a number of steps and processes that introduce that transformational dimension, that really try to make sense, okay, beyond that incremental step, what does it take for a region and a community to bring about transformational change in its socio-ecological systems. We have also, very deliberately so, aligned our regional resilience journey with the climate transition map that the Mission Cities is using as its conceptual framework to guide the cities going to net zero. And we've done so first and foremost to also facilitate the consideration and the consolidation of efforts on the ground in the cities and in the regions of those that really want to move ahead, both integrating the adaptation and the mitigation elements together at the same time. So we have very deliberately aligned procedurally and conceptually with this approach. So beyond and within certainly the cities and the mission cities, where the adaptation mission, where there are regions and cities doing the same thing at the same time, but also beyond, there is a tool now that helps to integrate that. Next is, one of the differences between the cities mission at large, the net zero cities as a consortium helping to implement the city's mission, Pathway to Resilience only covers a part of this resilience journey. The resilience journey as such is really meant to support the cities all the way through to achieving the transition to climate resilience. And to really, from the strategizing to the experimentation and implementation to the scaling up and actually making the new thing the new normal. And so this is then really that's the whole thing. Pathway to Resilience is really just focused on the strategizing and planning phase. So the scope is that, the entire thing, but our activities, our support are just limited to the strategizing. I will now take you to a few steps of the RRJ. First of all, and very important to know, before we actually go on the journey, we have to think about enabling conditions. Now, it is really important to recognize that we cannot plan or straightforwardly systems transitions or transformations. Things are too complex for that. And so we cannot linearly plan this, but what we have to do is to really mobilize and prepare a very fruitful environment for these activities and to be catalyzed and to flourish. And so we really work and take very serious, as does the mission adaptation as such in its framework, to support enabling conditions to be leveraged. These include, for example, finance and resource, knowledge and data, governance, engagement, and collaboration, etc. P2R will help the regions and communities leveraging these enabling conditions along and the main steps of the journey. And Kit England, for example, will explain later on in another session how that looks like in the context of finance and investment. The actual first step of the resilience journey is then the preparing the ground. This phase includes activities around establishing a baseline, understanding relevant systems and interdependencies, and an assessment and the prioritization of current and future climate risks and vulnerabilities. That would be together sort of preparing, be the baseline to work from. The next step, or the next phase, is then one to build a shared vision. This includes elements such as mobilization of relevant actors to actually ensure ownership of and commitment for the co-development of this strategy and then the further implementation, the exploration of possible climate resilient futures and a debate about what this society actually wants in terms of a future in climate resilience state, and the co-creation of that vision of really agreeing on what's the destination of your transition to be, as well as developing a theory of change, knowing how and why, or outlining how and why desired change are expected or is expected to happen. This then provides the base for the last of the steps we have, in which is then designing or defining more concrete detailed pathways on how to actually get there. This is having activities which focus on the identification and assessment of specific options for climate adaptation and for transformation to climate resilience, as well as then include a co-design of a portfolio of all sorts of interventions and for innovation roadmap that is supporting these pathways to be developed. Concluding this process, we hope to have the regions in a position to have developed a baseline report, a climate resilience strategy, a climate resilience action plan, and MEL frameworks, monitoring, evaluation, and learning frameworks, and a climate resilience investment plan as a very important tool to really get going for real. Finally, I end and I conclude with pointing you to a new part of our website, so web pages that in more detail present the regional resilience journey, and where you can read about much more about each of the steps and what these do. As one additional part I want to point out here, you will see on the lower parts there are 3 tabs, and that explains about the why and the how and the what, and it has a tab about the tools. This tab doesn't work yet, or it's work in progress, but in the coming months we will be gathering and providing access to all sorts of tools, methodological guidance, templates, etc., that will be supporting each one of these single activities and steps that we are suggesting as a possible means to go ahead. And these will also be formed and part and parcel of our training programs when we go and interact with the regions. And with that, I conclude and wish you all the best. And I'm really looking forward to work with you all in those regions that apply together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Thomas. And I know it's been hard work that went into designing and developing the RRJ. Thomas and Luca have been leading on this one, and Luca will come on stage a bit later. Now, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Ricardo, who will dive a bit deeper into the call for applications. So listen carefully. You will also find the information on the website. He is also program manager within this very same cluster, again, so we have a full team here. And he is also responsible for the sub-granting process and leads on the open call. So he will be responding to you in case you have any questions.
To some of the questions, at least. So thank you very much for the intro. Let's see if this is as intuitive as expected. So I will try to be as pragmatic as possible, but I probably will have to be too fast, and I will have to oversimplify some of the call elements. So please don't hold me against some lack of detail or contradicting language. The final document is in our website since yesterday. It was a journey, so looking forward to share that with you. So with that disclaimer, let me try to give you the highlights that are important about the call that we just launched. So first of all, that's the website. We welcome the applications until 22nd of February of next year, naturally. And yeah, for all related questions, you can ask them here. You can ask them in many other ways. We favor the email address there as well. And all the questions that we will receive We will collect the answers and make them publicly online as far as our capabilities allow as well. Maybe not on the 21st of February, for example. But yeah, let's get, what are some of the key things? So like I said, applications should only go through the Pathways to Resilience website. The application link is not entirely there right now. We're having some technical issues, but it will be there next week. But already there is all the information that you need to study and prepare for the call, even though we try to make it as simple as possible. On this first call for applications, essentially, we're going to select 40 sub-grantees. Each of them will have a budget of up to 210,000 euros. And the support period that we make available is 18 months, roughly between July 2024 and December 2025. The main selection criteria for this first call, we're going to try and pick the regions that have the highest vulnerability. That means not only that they are exposed to higher climate risks than others, but also that they have low adaptive capacity, institutional, economically, or otherwise. And also, we want a portfolio of regions that is as diverse as possible, since after all, this is a research project, and we want that our support in the end not only is validated by the 100 regions, but also is useful for way more regions than that. So diversity helps. And we ask that all the applicants select a specific scope that they're going to be working on. So essentially, apply. We want you to implement the RRJ that my colleague just described, and at which scope will you do it? If you're familiar with the statistical code, so NUTS 1, NUTS 2, NUTS 3, LAU, or equivalent, so it's not limited to the NUTS system. But that's going to be one of them. So for example, the scope should not be 2 levels, but only one of them, so choices must be made. This is a timeline, not so much new to look here, but essentially we're going to be scheduling 3 information sessions, which should be rather similar, so you're not missing out if you can't make it to all of them, as exciting as they may be, but it's one opportunity to ask questions, have more of a one-on-one interaction. Essentially, what is there can be summarized in we accept applications until the 22nd. Essentially, if you're eligible, you will know by March. Then we have a period of selection of around 3 months. By June, we expect to be signing, and we expect to be working with you from July onwards. And then this should be over by 2025. If I still know how to click. I want to make sure I get this one as clear as possible. So the expectation from the subgrantees that we will select is roughly twofold. One, we expect that you essentially try to implement the RRJ as described, because the purpose is please use it, review, help us validate it, and also enrich the toolbox that we're building with your best practices. Again, this is a research project, and part of our objective is really to see if this methodology makes sense, and the best way to do it is basically by co-designing it with you. So that's number one. Number two is essentially we expect, or rather we hope, that our support helps you to advance in your adaptation or climate resilience planning. We will be measuring this through the RRJ deliverables that my colleague already mentioned. But one thing that I should mention here is that progress might look completely different from one region to another. So for some regions, it might make sense that the progress is essentially making the first version of these deliverables, and others might make sense if they focus on enhancing, upgrading essentially one segment of those already existing plans. For example, spending more time and resources on the stakeholder engagement part or co-creating a shared vision. And from that, that's the hope that this will make the funding to good use, the funding and the support, of course. In terms of eligibility, essentially, the applicants must be part of EU member states or associated countries. There's some exceptions. I feel the need to make the mention to a particularly unfortunate one, because as some of you know, the United Kingdom will be part of Horizon Europe, but it does not apply in this case because our budget comes from before. So unfortunate, but that's what it is. And then the other restriction in terms of in terms of, let's say, country or area, is that the applicants must be from Europe's biogeographical regions. What does this mean? Basically, North Africa, not eligible, and for example, the non-European territories of France, also not eligible, like La Réunion Island and so on. Now, let's see if I can get this simple enough. So, the ones that can apply must be public authorities at the NUTS 1, 2, 3, or LAU, or equivalent, or bodies governed by public law. Those are the ones that can apply. The applications can be sole beneficiaries or consortia, so one entity or multiple. The applicant must the one that is the coordinator, the one that is the contact point, must always be one of these. However, if it is a consortium, other entities can be part of it, non-profit bodies and SMEs, as per the European definition. Hopefully I managed to make that clear enough. Eligible activities, that's a lot of text, I hope I can summarize it. Essentially, what the funding will be eligible for is any activity that relates to developing the outputs. Strategy sessions, work dedicated to defining pathways, and so on and so forth. Support activities like stakeholder engagement, research, and so on, capacity building, not only within the public authority but beyond, can be extremely relevant. And then let's say, further support activities such as communication, knowledge sharing is very important for us, and of course, project management. And I have to make the note, what is not eligible is anything related to actual demonstration and implementation of adaptation options. There are other projects for that. I will not spend too much time here. I am very happy to talk about selection process, but it takes a long time. I'll just make it super quick. We essentially have 3 stages, and we'll be looking at, in the pre-screening, we'll look at the vulnerability using external data. The second stage, the external evaluation, we look at your answers to these criteria. At the third level, we look essentially at diversity, making sure that we have a portfolio which is useful to us, and to Europe and beyond. And exactly because vulnerability is the key indicator here, the next presentation should be useful, but maybe I'll let Louise make the introduction.
Thanks, Ricardo. I guess there's many question marks now for you, and I'm pretty sure once reading through the call for applications, things will clarify. So before we get a bit more practical and have other practitioners on stage, let me also introduce Efren Felio, who will be talking about climate data sets. And I know we're a bit behind, so we might cut the Q&A and the coffee break. Let's see. He is Climate Change Adaptation Manager at the City, Territory and Environmental Area of Tecnalia.
Thank you very much.
The floor is yours.
It's a resilience journey with us. Is it working? Hello? No. Okay. I was rushing to the stage because of the time limitations. Okay, my presentation is going to be brief, and it intends to frame this selection process with authoritative data sources, existing authoritative data sources, which are important in the framework of the EU adaptation strategy, while other resources like EUCRA or Climax are developing outcomes to be used in deploying climate adaptation. But also trying to bridge or to be a starting point, but for that strategic planning and transformative pathways development in the framework of Pathways to Resilience. So first, in relation to the selection stage that Ricardo was mentioning, an important input is going to be the IRC Vulnerability Index, which is addressing different components of vulnerability to natural hazards and climate change, with different components, governance, social, economic, natural resources that is available at national level, but also allows getting deeper information for certain variables and indicators in NATS 2 and NATS 3 levels. As a complementary information, the IRC also has the informed climate data sets, which are only available at national level, but are giving us the possibility of having full coverage in certain regions in which some limitations with specific data sources could be found. In third instance, and for the strategic portfolio design, and therefore looking for that diversity, we are going to be using the ESPON climate, which has EU27 coverage plus some other countries. But it's true that in the case of ESPON climate, there are some limitations, mostly for outermost regions, derived from the coverage of Eurocordex. And well, anyhow, I think that the alignment with the IPCC approach is giving us and the possibility of analyzing different RCPs and different time horizons is a good starting point, linking to that strategy development. And it is also important that it's quite aligned with the previous data sources that we've been mentioning. Well, the Risk Data Hub, the PESETA report, the European Climate Data Explorer coming from the Copernicus Climate Change Service and available through Climate Adapt and the EA. Well, the ESPON climate is interestingly addressing different impact chains, which is similar to the approach that the UCRA is going to have analyzing those impact chains. I will not go over the complete list, but beyond the overall aggregated vulnerability and risk that is available in ESPON climate is giving interesting information for the regions in order to identify potential hotspots, to say it somehow, or thematic areas, and digging into the data, you could get more information. Those 80 impact chains are available for different time horizons or RCPs, and therefore the plethora of data and maps is important, counting in any case with the aggregated risk with European coverage for the different RCPs and time horizons. And well, this data can be accessible through the ESPON database. There you have the links and will be available. That could help the preparation process of the proposals. And well, there are specific, not only the data sources or the data sets that you can access, but there are map viewers which are accessible through those links and could be an interesting resource for preparing the applications. Anyhow, you will have there the database contact point, which could help you accessing and manipulating the data. And I think that's all from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. And I would like to jump directly into the Q&A. First of all, is there any questions here in this room? Which would be great, because then I can have a look at the iPad if there's online questions. Okay. So there is a couple of online questions. One of them is, how would this pre-screening stage be done to assess the vulnerability of the regions? Who wants to answer? Ricardo?
I think I feel very called for that one. It's honestly too complicated to be able to say it in one line. The question is how the pre-screening will be done. I will try to make it as short as possible, but if it's not understandable, please forgive me. We have a limit of applications that we can evaluate. We have 40 slots, we can evaluate 80. And how we will choose the 80 that will be evaluated will be 1. the total number of available slots, 80, divided by the number of countries that apply. So each country will get as much as possible an equal number of applications possible that will be evaluated. And then to select which applications will be selected from each of the countries will be based on the vulnerability index. So basically, let's say if there are 3 slots possible for Italian regions, then and there are 5 that apply, then the 3 most vulnerable regions will be the ones that will pass to the next phase. Likewise, if we have to choose between a slot for one country or the other to make it equal, we will use another one of the indicators to choose the country that is most vulnerable. And it gets more complicated, but I will stick to this.
Great, thanks. And I guess there's another question for you. Maybe also others can jump in if they want to complement. How will adaptive capacity be measured in the context of the call?
Efren? I think that one is more for you than me.
The primary data.
Yeah.
Again, note that that's what we were referring by the vulnerability index as a first step to understand vulnerability, which implies also adaptive capacity as part of that vulnerability scoring, assessment, etc. At the last stage, the strategic portfolio design, ESPON climate could inform additionally in most of the regions except outermost regions, because adaptive capacities are priced with a number of indicators coming from official data sources.
And I would just like to add to that one, the true complete answer would have to be obtained by looking into the indicators that we're using. So the links that Efren shared before are also in the open call document, of course, which you should check, which is on our website. But I would just say from the top of my head, so please don't hold it against me, that at least in one of the indicators, adaptive capacity, I believe, is measured by factors such as economic, social, and other indicators. So sort of macroeconomic ways of looking at the adaptive capacity of the country. Institutional capacity, I believe, as well, somehow. But yeah, I'll leave that to the scientists.
No, well, there is a complete data source, and some of the indicators are related, socioeconomic indicators, institutional indicators linked to that component of vulnerability, which is the adaptive capacity.
And again, we might enjoy this too much, but we do find that looking at these indicators can be quite interesting, regardless of this being related to the open call. So we also invite you to look into them better.
Thank you. There's one question in here.
Good morning, Gianluca Spinaci, European Committee of the Regions. So first of all, we will very likely cooperate, and we are very pleased to cooperate with this project. My question is, when will you have, during the year 2025, some capitalization, let's say horizontal report, that we can use in terms of messaging? In the Committee of the Region, we have president of regions, we have mayors, we have the decision makers, the political level, and for us it's very important the timing, the sequencing, because we will have a very important deadline in 2025 in policy making.
And I'll take that one very quickly, or we take a few others?
No, take this.
This one?
Yes.
Shall we meet Tuesday between 10 and 11 to start discussing? We're very happy to move towards and all of our information. It's one of the beauty of Horizon Europe. All of this information is public through Cordis, but we're also very happy to show a calendar of all of our deliverables, etc. But the way we have designed the program is that we will be having progress reports along the line. We already have some information from our expression of interest. We will have, one of the things that was not mentioned in detail, we have this tool is called the self-assessment tool for the resilience maturity curve that all of the applicants will have to submit, and that's more evidence that we start gathering. So we have a series of of documents, practice, science, policy documents, in addition to all of the practical work that we're doing with Pathways to Resilience that will be produced over time. And we are more than happy to communicate that. And also, there will be a calendar for all of the things that will be going public to Climate Adapt. But the good thing is that, as I mentioned, that all of this is public knowledge. However, also through the collaboration with Meet for Adapt and a few of the other projects, and we also are intending to without reinventing the wheel and without overcomplicating things, to have these lessons and concrete, let's say, evidence that some of the aspects, if not, we will not wait until 2025 or 2027 to know if these work. We can know along the line, and for that we have already developed a very robust framework for our theory of change, a set of indicators, and we are aligned those indicators to the ones of Meet for Adapt and more broadly to monitor progress. So we have that in our planning, and more than happy not only with Committee of the Regions but with other interested parties, and something that we are doing with the mission projects anyway, and with the mission secretariat, something that, and with the European Environmental Agency, something that we and the Joint Research Center of the European Commission, something that we already ongoing in the planning processes. So happy to.
Linking to the previous question, the self-assessment, which I forgot to mention, will be important on top of the objective indicators and data sources that we will use. The self-assessment is also importantly informing that understanding of the adaptive capacity.
Thank you very much. I would love to wrap up, otherwise we're really falling behind. I'm very sorry. Can you keep that question for the break? Yes? Okay. Or put it in Slido. We will make sure to respond to most of the questions because they are very relevant, and I'm very sorry that we can't answer all of them. But otherwise we will completely extend the meeting. Thanks a lot.